So I recently just watched Count Dankula's video on the smoking ban in New Zealand, and there was really no point in watching it. Basically said exactly what I thought he would. He lamented the ban, he talked about freedom of choice, freedom to put whatever you want in your body regardless if it's harmful or not. And the reason I want to criticise this, not just Count Dankula, his video or his take on the smoking ban in New Zealand, but rather libertarians in general, is not necessarily because I'm against smoking, although obviously I am. It's rather the shallow take, the shallow perspective that libertarians have on freedom. And again, going back to his video, going back to smoking as a topic and drugs in general, which I'll cover later on. If you look at smoking, how people get into smoking, how people obviously stay smoking, not only is there nothing to do with freedom, to do with your own choice, your own body, it's really antithetical to that, because again, how do people get into smoking? It's not really a choice they make of their own free will, it's not really a choice they make as an independent person. Really, 9 times out of 10, if not more, it's solely through coercion. It's through social pressure, peer pressure. When they're younger, people around them are doing it. And this is another thing you have to keep in mind when you're talking about freedom, freedom of choice, freedom from the government. Everyone's born into a certain social circumstance, a certain culture both in the wider sense and again a culture of your immediate peers, your friends, your school, your family, these kind of things. So no one, and I'm obviously including this to myself, really can be said to be a free individual, their own person, in an absolute sense. Everybody's influenced both in their character, in terms of how they are right now, and their future actions by their society. And this is obviously how people get into smoking, despite virtually everyone both knowing and fully believing that it is bad for you, that there's nothing good to it all. It's addictive, it's expensive, it completely damages your health. So they're getting it through coercion. So in terms of actually starting smoking, it isn't a free choice in the classical sense of someone sitting down considering it. It is pure coercion, it's pure peer pressure. In terms of how people carry on with smoking, why they continue with it, that comes out of the addictiveness of the substance. So again, we're not talking about free choice, we're not talking about an individual making a choice, we're talking about an addictive substance. Chemicals, things it does to your brain. And I think anyone that has a more robust and genuine understanding of freedom will come to terms with this, will say, what is more important? Your freedom to take this harmful substance, or your freedom from it? Your freedom from the coercion, from the peer pressures to get into it, and the freedom from the actual physical, the psychological, the chemical effects of the thing. And again, I think most sensible people who have really thought about it will say that the addictive qualities, that the peer pressure is more coercing, is more a serious limitation on your freedom. Not to mention the health aspects that could kill you, that could limit your physical freedom, than it being banned. And again, this isn't just about Count Dankula, his videos, but getting onto the wider topic of drugs in general. Another thing that you'll notice about the libertarians is they're extremely self-centred, extremely egotistical. And when I say this, I mean that they talk about, this isn't all of them obviously, but a decent amount, genuinely believe that all drugs should be legalised. And the framework that they use for this, the kind of ideal person, the abstract person that they're thinking of, is themselves, usually 20 something with very little to no responsibilities. But I think if you merely look at other people, again this isn't even talking about the freedom aspect, but you could say taking heroin for example, and again a lot of these people genuinely do believe that these drugs should be legalised. If you say to these people, should heroin be legalised? I would say yes, but what if you apply it to police, firefighters, doctors? Should police be allowed to take heroin? Should single mothers be allowed to take heroin? Should school teachers be allowed to take these drugs, whether they be, you know, heroin, cocaine, even stuff like weed? You get into a more difficult problem, you might kind of trip them up, because when they're thinking about these freedoms, when they're thinking about these drugs, they're solely applying it to people like themselves and themselves. They're not thinking about single mothers, police officers, firefighters, teachers, kind of politicians, leaders, people who have real responsibility, and how this would affect their lives. And again, even the idea that this is about freedom, that you're giving people the choice to take heroin, even more so, you know, tenfold in cigarettes. How do people get into heroin? Who makes the free choice as an abstract, deracinated individual to get into heroin? Virtually no one, you know, maybe 1 in 10,000 people who get into heroin. It's solely coercion, it's solely social pressure, it's solely kind of the culture and the people around you. And again, tenfold, why do people keep taking it? It's because of the addictive substance. So you're trading your freedom to take a poison, your freedom to smoke, to take heroin, I don't know, to drink bleach, for example. You're trading that for freedom against peer pressure, social coercion, and again, these life-destroying and addictive substances, which not only should apply to yourself, but apply to, again, single mothers, police officers, doctors, people who are more responsible in more serious positions. And moving away from drugs, just to really highlight the problem with freedom in the wider sense, in the more robust sense, from solely freedom from the government. I believe I've actually heard Count Dankula say this, that while he's kind of against religious schools, like madrasas for example, he wouldn't ban them, he wouldn't outlaw them, he wouldn't have the state interfere in any way. There was a wee bird there. He wouldn't have the state interfere in any way. So basically, in principle, he's in favour of allowing by law these religious institutions, these schools, to take people in, indoctrinate them with ideologies, with beliefs, with things that are going to severely restrict their freedom of sexuality, freedom of choice, different pathways they might want to choose in life. He's for that. Of course, he's against it in principle, but in terms of law, in terms of actually doing something about it, he's not going to do anything about it, because the freedom of this religious institution, the freedom of this madrasa, is more important than the freedom of the people within it to basically do anything, to, on a very fundamental level, not be indoctrinated by nonsense, not be indoctrinated by pure evil. Similarly, looking at drugs, cigarettes, heroin, the freedom of the tobacco company and the drug dealer, in Count Dankula's worldview, is more important than your freedom from social pressure, peer pressure, coercion, from being addicted to the substances. And this is why libertarians not only really anger me, but really try to annoy me, get under my skin, because of just how ridiculously absurd their worldview is, that freedom comes above all, which in itself I believe is an absolute nonsense. But even if you look at this freedom, this kind of childish rebellion against the state, even when the state is coming in the many circumstances that it does, to restrict the freedom for other people, to take away your freedom, again in terms of religious schools, drugs, cigarettes. So yeah, I think if we really want to look at freedom as it is, freedom of choice, we have to have a more rounded, more sophisticated really worldview than freedom from the state is the only freedom that you can have. in freedom of choice, in terms of freedom of bodily choice even, is the only freedom you can have, because that's what we've went over. You have cultural coercion, you have social coercion. Everyone exists in a kind of context. You don't have deracinated individuals who are purely abstract. There is a context to everyone's life, and if you're talking about freedom, you have to work within that and talk about in which ways, keeping in mind that because we are influenced by this, we are coerced by this, we ourselves can't make these free choices. In which ways can we be liberated from that, in whichever way it's advantageous? Again, in terms of banning cigarettes, banning madrasas, banning certain drugs, banning alcohol, even though within the context of that society it may be accepted, even though within the context of that society individuals may make the big air quotes here choice to get within them.